Welcome to a football show here from the 440 Sports Network Thursday edition. Nick Suss of the Tennessean and Braden Gall. You can get involved in the show. Please do so on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. YouTube is by far the best. That's also where all the other great content is from 440 Sports. So please, thumbs up, notifications turned on. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Lots of stuff to discuss today on the show as we will dive into all four draft classes from the AFC South. Maybe touch on gambling in college football. And Chad Brinker's departure from the Tennessee Titans. Power struggle. Who has final say on the roster, Nick? Is it Chad Brinker? Answer, no. Good morning. How are you?
I'm here. We're happy. We're going to talk about this stuff. If you have questions about it, I will do my best to answer them. I feel fairly confident that I've got a read on what happened in there, and it is nowhere near as scandalous as you guys are going to want it to be.
Nothing is ever as scandalous as anyone wants it to be. You know, like there's so many crazy things happen in our country, Nick, and everyone's like, it could be this, it could be that. And it's like, no, it's just this over here. It's just regular old human behavior just taking place over here. Special thanks to Sinkers again for putting on a great show over the weekend. I know I said this on Monday with PK, but want to say it with you present as well, Nick, which is thank you to you and to everyone who came out, both audience and reporter and sponsor and supporter of our kids and the Titans in the NFL draft. So that's Shotgun Willie's, that's ML Rose on Thursday night. That is Sinkers Beverages, of course, primarily for putting on this event, putting on a great selection of bourbon, great food from Shotgun Willie's, great audience, all of you who were there, who raised all this money for charity, over $5,000. Appreciate all of you, and for you and Cav and PK and James Foster for being there and hanging out and, just offering your wisdom, your perspective, your experiences to our audience. It was a ton of fun. Great to see everybody out there. Love seeing people in person in real life, which reminds me, again, thank you, Sinkers, for all of that. But in real life, Nick, we're going to see football tomorrow.
Correct.
Are you excited? I'm excited.
Yeah. No, I like football. I think I've made that pretty clear over the past 32 years or so. I do.
All right, so Nick is breaking up a little bit. Maybe it's on my end. We'll see what happens. So bear with us through our technical difficulties.
No, it's my fault.
Okay. Do you need to leave the room and come back in?
My fault.
Is that what we need to do?
No, I tried to pull up the Texans draft class, and my computer said too much bandwidth.
We need to get you a new computer. We need to get that. Come on, Gannett. Where's the Gannett budget at, man? Let's go. Get this man a computer that works and does more than one thing at a time. Okay. So here we go. Nick needs to close those Excel spreadsheets. There you go, Ed.
I only have one Excel spreadsheet open, and it's weird.
My one question. Okay, here we go. My one question: if Ward doesn't improve a lot, will this be a Brinker pick according to fans? Oh, it's good. I like that. No answer from Nick.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. That's the problem with evaluating the Chad Brinker era, is that nobody actually knows who did what for the last 3.5 years.
Is it fair to say that of all the characters in that story over the last 3.5 years, that Chad Brinker probably had the least impact?
By design, maybe?
Right. I'm not saying that as a knock on him.
Yeah. By practicality, I have no clue. Like, we'll get into this, but I do think that the structure of what the Titans have personnel-wise right now in the front office probably reflects Brinker's vision more than we give it credit. But the actual on-field decision-making might not.
I think that's probably the right way to... The organizational was steered in one direction by Brinker and company. The football was steered in kind of a similar direction by Borgonzi and company, all of which involves everybody, of course, all the time. And honestly, you could just blame everything on Rand if you want to, like all the bad stuff. Just blame it all on Rand if you want to, and ownership for that matter too, because she's catching a lot of strays on this. So here, or not strays, maybe direct relational blame. All right, so there's a lot of when this story first broke. He puts out his statement, right? The Titans put out their statement. He puts out his statement, and it gets pushed out, and everybody, Chad Brinker stepping down from his role with the Tennessee Titans. And I think what happened is there was a lot of instantaneous assumptions, and because the internet's never done that before, Nick. The internet has never jumped to conclusions. It's never jumped to conspiracy theories. The internet famously great for nuanced, thoughtful, logical approaches to stories and settling on the most obvious and probably most likely situation. Famously, the internet great at this. So I want you to debunk some of the theories that I've seen floating around. And if you'd like to present some theories that have been floating around, that's fine. If you in the comments would like to ask questions about some theories as why Chad Brinker is no longer a part of the Tennessee Titans, please feel free. So the first one that I saw, I don't know which ones popped up in your timeline, but the first ones that I saw were all about a power struggle, that Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker hate each other, and that they've been battling for control of the Tennessee Titans, and that Chad Brinker has been pushed out by Mike Borgonzi's ruthless gangster mafia approach to building a football team. That was the first one I saw. What do you think?
No, not thinking that's what happened. I think this will be a recurring thing I say as we kind of dance around the truth and give you as much of the truth as we can. I do not believe this move was motivated by anyone other than Chad Brinker.
Agreed.
Like I can say with a reporter's certainty here that if you are somebody who is believing in the smokescreen of, oh, he was fired, this isn't a resignation. No, like he stepped down. That part is true.
I'll get to the second internet theory. Just give me a second.
If you are somebody who thinks, oh, this was a premeditated power struggle between guy who hired guy and guy who rose above the guy who hired him, I don't really think that's the case either. I think the simple reality here is that the roles that had been bequeathed upon Chad Brinker as he rose up the ranks within the Titans organization reached further and further away from the roles that Chad Brinker wanted to be handling as an executive, and frankly, from the roles that may or may not have been available to Chad Brinker if he stepped away from the Titans. I personally would not be surprised if Brinker finds himself in another front office, maybe not immediately, but by year's end, I wouldn't be shocked if something happened there. Because I do think that the job he sees himself doing is different than the job he was doing. And that is not necessarily Mike Borgonzi's fault. Like, Mike Borgonzi did not assign Chad Brinker his current responsibilities. Mike Borgonzi just happened to be assigned the responsibilities that Chad Brinker sees himself working towards having.
Oh, God, what a boring story, Nick. Just regular old things happened in a regular old organization in a very kind of slow-moving way as an organization tries to figure out which direction it's going in and who to value and who needs to do what, and hey, we need someone to do this role and we need someone to do this role. And sometimes in a workplace, you get assigned things that you don't really love to do and don't want to do. No one's ever experienced that in life, Nick. Stop with this normalcy. Stop with regular. Look, this is better. Z Dean. I heard Brinker hired a private investigator to follow Vrabel around. Mission complete, so he left. That's more fun, Nick. Let's do the internet thing. Let's be more fun. You're not being fun enough.
You want me to be fun? You want me to explain the weird spreadsheet I have open that's slowing down my computer?
Look, we'll get to draft picks in a little while. That's how I see it too, and that's from talking to folks. I'm certainly not as well sourced as you, but I have look. So we didn't know exactly what the roles were 3 years ago, and we kind of had a sense. And he was a part of something, and then as time went on, his responsibilities were shifted, and that's it. It's all it is, and it's not really what he wants to do.
Yeah,
and it's not more complicated than that.
If you guys do want something that is bordering a little bit more on scandalous,
yes, let's do that.
I have written this, I've reported this. This is not me saying something new for the first time, but it's worth discussing. The read I got from one source that I spoke to who has knowledge of the situation is that the constant shuffling and reshuffling of roles during the 3+ years that Brinker was on staff, that was always done in the name of collaboration, never felt as if it was done in the name of collaboration. It often felt like it was done in the name of conflict management, in a way of, okay, well, if we tell this person that they have this job and we tell this person that they have this job and everybody's happy because everybody has a big job and everybody gets their ego stroked because everybody seems to be a big deal, then we can avoid creating this power struggle by letting everybody have their own thing. Now, again, this is not from the horse's mouth. This is not from Brinker or Burke or somebody who like made the decision. This is not from Amy. She's not talking to me. But I do think that if you view what happened during the Chad Brinker era purely from the Brinker perspective, and I know that that is not something people want to do. I know people don't want to be like, let's get in the empathetic head of Chad Brinker. But let's break his tenure down into 4 slices, 4 segments. Right. Segment number 1, he worked for the guy who hired him. Segment number 2, he was the boss of the guy who hired him. Segment number 3, he was the boss of the guy he hired. And segment number 4, he worked for the guy he hired. That is all 4 options. In a span of 3 years and 3 months, roughly, he did all 4 options. That is a lot of shuffling in a short period. And I know it's not exclusively because the Titans are a mess. And I know it's not exclusively because Brinker was a weird mix of roles. And I know it's not exclusively because Borgonzi came. Like, there's a lot of factors that contribute to why all of these roles shuffled. And most of them are about guys who are no longer employed by the Tennessee Titans. But if you do think of it from the perspective of the guy who just left, that is a lot of moving pieces for a guy who comes from a place that is kind of the epitome of stability. That stuff doesn't happen in the Green Bay model he grew up in. And it is very, very understandable if that was exhausting and if that was a contributing reason for why Brinker decided to move on.
Yeah, I think organizations that evolve and move, they're very amorphous at times. To your point, Green Bay's not. Green Bay's very structured. Kansas City seems to be very structured, but a lot of times an organization, a fairly large organization, is a very amorphous entity that moves and shapes and evolves and adapts with time and environments and situations and rules and everything else. And as it moves and adapts, pieces falling into place kind of naturally, building an organizational structure is a great thing that can happen. And sometimes that means people's roles or identities change a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you are doing all of that moving and shifting and adapting to try to stop the thing from exploding in our faces, that's a different thing that's happening. And it does feel like for most of Brinker's situation, or at least the first half, let's call it, the first 2 roles you're talking about, that was just like I think conflict management is the best way to describe it. It is big personality over here, big personality over here, people who don't know what they're doing over here, personality over here. We're not sure how it's all supposed to fit together. We got to get this thing organized. Whereas with Brinker, Borgonzi, and the current structure, it feels a little bit more like water finding its level naturally. And it feels like that's the way you want to do this. And in that process, someone is just not going to have the thing that they love. And again, I don't want to rehash the exact same explanation of this, which is Chad Brinker wants to be in football and he's not really in football, and that wasn't really anybody's fault. It just sort of happened. And because I will say somebody asked this in the comments, like, and I can't remember exactly, I'll have to go back and find it, but like at the end of the day, the role that Chad Brinker was playing is a very big job. It's not that you don't have things to do. It's a very big job. You've got tons of things. Running a football team is kind of like running a hospital. It's actually like running like 6 businesses at once. There's a travel agency, there's a restaurant, there's a hotel, there is a medical facility. Like it's like running 6 different businesses all in one. You have to know about landscape architecture and management of landscapes with the practice fields and a stadium you have to run. And there's so much stuff you have to do. It's why for 2 years, I've said, I don't think Chad Brinker is making any real decisions on football. Like I've said that, I think, for 2 drafts now. So when people in the comments are asking about, well, who's responsible for Cam Ward and who's responsible for Femi and who's responsible for Carnell Tate, like I don't, not in a bad way, I just put it mostly on Mike Borgonzi. These last two draft classes are Mike Borgonzi draft classes and his staff and their decision making. I'm not really sure Chad, I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess that I don't think Chad was really involved in final decisions on any of those top players. He might have been included in a conversation, but I think it was Mike Borgonzi's team and staff making the decisions about the Titans football players, and it was exclusively in his purview, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Gentry pointed this out. Go read the Tennessean if you want to read his very good column on this, but go back and watch the draft calls from the 25 class. Go watch the calls of Cam Ward and Femi and these guys. Brinker is in the rotation of who's getting the phone in those calls.
Right.
Now watch the calls this year. Brinker is not in the rotation of who is getting the calls. Clearly, there has been some sort of pecking order that has pushed him further away from the football aspect of it. And he said it in his statement when he resigned. He wants to get back to doing the things that he came up doing. That doesn't mean putting together the travel schedule and being the department head for the medical staff. He wants to be in football. I'm not sitting here saying that I think that the Minnesota Vikings GM job is the thing he's going to do. I personally do not expect that. And if it happens, good for him. We'll see how he does in the job.
Right.
But I do think that this is take a step back so that you can, in the future, take a step forward much more than it is take a step forward right now.
I agree. 10 says, and yet you want Sean Henry fired with the Preds. Are you referring to what I just said about Brinker's role having a lot of things to do? I first of all, I've never said Sean Henry should be fired at all. It's never been an opinion of mine. I think the role of managing the team, CEO of the team, i.e. Burke Nihill or Chad Brinker or Sean Henry in that role is very different than being the role of Mike Borgonzi or Barry Trotz or David Poyle. Being a general manager requires scouting skill. Running an arena requires financing and business skill. They're just you need to be a marketing director. You need to be they're two totally different jobs. So I've never once said that Sean Henry should be fired. I think my co-host Adam Vingan said that maybe, but I've never said that. And so this is interesting from Ed here. Maybe it won't be publicly announced, but does Bryce Wasserman take over for Brinker, at least in part? Now, I would argue that he's not qualified to do that role, but I also think that role, you can grow into that role easier. But it does raise an interesting question about ownership, which is one of the other conspiracy theories here, is that ownership was pushing him out or whatever. And it is hard to look at the organizational restructure that slowly happened over time. Some of it just sort of naturally on its own course, and the ownership that immediately gets blamed for everything, which I don't necessarily think is fair. There has to be some element of ownerships involved in all of this, because they're approving of Borgonzi being shifted over. They're approving of Brinker being shifted over and not getting the job when Borgonzi was hired. So the ownership does have some say in this, but I don't think it's nearly as nefarious as we hated Chad Brinker, we actually fired him, and now he's out because it's a fake resignation or whatever. I don't think that's the case.
I think there's a difference here between say and influence. I do not think that ownership pushed for this to happen. But I would say go ahead and reflect on the statements that have been put out regarding the decisions that ownership has pushed regarding some of these organizational restructures.
Yeah.
Think about the most recent one that happened in January, and think about the phrasing of whose decisions we were being told these choices were. And now think back if the decisions that have happened after the fact are consistent with what we were told was the decision then.
I'm barely keeping up with you.
Okay,
Nick.
let me be less oblique. Think about how it was said that it was Brinker and Borgonzi's decision to realign who has final say. And now think about Brinker's statement about why he thinks it is best to leave, and ask yourself if you still believe that it was Brinker and Borgonzi's decision.
And
Ask yourself if you think it was either of their decisions, if you think it was one person's decision. I'm not sitting here like, oh, I totally believed it then, and now I totally don't believe it now. But like, this does kind of change the idea of, okay, so what was ownership's involvement in all of this realigning? We know what ownership's involvement was in the Ran and Brinker situation, because ownership
exclusively
because ownership kind of made it very clear that ownership was making the decision to promote and demote and do certain things. With the Brinker Borgonzi thing, we were very much sold this was Chad's choice and Mike's choice, and they arrived at it through collaboration. And our business model's working, and it has nothing to do with the business model. It's just what they wanted. Now it seems inconsistent with what has happened.
I'll say all of this, and I'm going to say this not like I am under the assumption that it's actually interesting to go back and look at those 4 different things, right? Like Brinker was hired underneath Ran. Then Brinker became the boss of Ran. Then Brinker, hired Borgonzi, and then Borgonzi became the boss of Brinker, right? Like those 4, right? So if we go back and look at the decisions, who was making those decisions, who was approving those decisions, who was in the room for those decisions. I'm not saying I know who said what or who pushed for what or whatever, but the hiring of Ran was probably done, I'm going to guess, call this informed speculation, with a little bit of Mike Vrabel, but mostly Amy Adams-Strunk, Burke Nihill, and maybe Bryce Wasserman. That would be the trio potentially, but mostly Burke and Amy. And the problem with those 3 over here is they have almost zero football experience between the 3 of them. Almost literally zero football experience, which shockingly leads to Ran Carthon. Then Ran with more football experience brings in Brinker, which is a little bit smarter of a football decision because Ran has football experience somewhat. Brings in Brinker, then they start making decisions. Now you've got Brinker and Ran in the room making decisions, right? Which involves Vrabel being moved on. That's still a lot more football information and knowledge and expertise than the previous decision-making group. So the decisions are getting slightly better as you add more football experience to the room making decisions. This isn't that complicated, right? Then Ran leaves, and then you have Brinker with a bunch of other football people, and then they make a decision on Callahan, and then they make the decision on Borgonzi. So as you are as you get better at football knowledge and remove the people who have no football knowledge, the decision making starts to get a little bit better every time. And I don't think it's an accident that decision making has led to more Mike Borgonzi and less Chad Brinker. And I think that's just sort of how this has gone. And so my question to you now, after all of that, is how much do you think ownership, or the ownership side of things, which I would include Wasserman and Burke Nihill in this, how much do you think, and really it's just Amy, how much do you think that person is involved with Mike Borgonzi's decision-making? That's really what matters now, because Brinker is what the Brinker story is done. It's over. He was here. He got, his roles got changed. This wasn't the path in his life that he viewed for himself, so he wants to go accomplish that somewhere else. Cool. The question now matters is how much is Amy actually involved with Mike Borgonzi's actual decision-making? And is it too much? Is it not enough? Is it just right? That would be my question.
My read is that it's not as much as people would expect when it comes to the practical decision-making.
That's right.
I think that there is more involvement than people would expect when it comes to justifying the decision-making. I do think she's hands-on in the sense that she wants to know why certain decisions are being made. She wants to be in the loop. I think it's very important to her to not be ignored or to not feel ignored when she is the person who is, by every legal matter, in charge of the operation. But I do not think that extends to her saying, okay, if you don't pick Jackie Marshall in the 6th round, your job's on the line. Like I think that there is more of a hands-off when it comes to the practicality of making the decisions. But I do think that she cares, maybe sometimes too much, about how the decisions will be received and perceived. And because of that, she does care to know why certain decisions are being made.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I think that's all right. Do you guys have any other questions about this? Big 2033 says, what owner knows a lot about football, but Adams forced the Vince Young pick? I don't disagree with that. There's no arguing that point, Big 2033. Unfortunately, they found themselves in a situation where the three people making the most important football decision had zero football experience. And I think they would tell you that was their mistake in the moment. I think they would be open about that. If you got them to actually talk on the record about this stuff, I think they would say, like, yeah, I don't really love that lane. That's not really my lane. I shouldn't be making football decisions. And somebody says, do you think Burke Nihill will take over a lot of the Brinker responsibilities since the stadium is nearing completion? Burke is mostly in charge of the stadium. And the running the stadium is still a major thing. Being CEO and president of an NFL team is still a ton of work. You can't just you can't just add all of football operations to Burke's job. I don't think that's fair to him. So, but do I think that you need to go out and hire some like big name to do this stuff, like make sure the grass is cut, make sure the food is cooked well, make sure that the facility is clean, make sure that the travel is booked, make sure there's good security, make sure that like the all the things that keep the team moving. You don't need you need someone with like great like structural like management skills, like business management skills, marketing departments, the PR departments, all that kind of stuff. I think Burke could do it, but I think it's two jobs. If I had to guess,
I think that, like, to try and put it in corporate speak.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Think of it as Brinker's job is the guy who all of the department heads report to. He is the head of department heads. And Borgonzi is the head of
football heads.
Yeah.
That's right. Would Amy ever hire an independent search firm? Do owners do that? Absolutely.
Some do.
Owners do that for sure. And I think independent search firms get a bad rap in general. A lot of times search firms, you don't outsource the search to them. You outsource the boots on the ground busy work to get the information to make the good decisions and build a list of candidates. They give you all the background. They give you all the on the ground reporting, as it were, about candidates. They bring that stuff back to you. Then you have conversations. They also have some people on the staffs generally that know ball. So they can come to you and say, hey, are you looking for an offensive mind with this type of offense? Or like, and then you can they can go out and do research for you. They bring the information back, and then you make all the decisions and do all the interviews and everything. So I just want to clarify that.
I will also add, I think it is usually more valuable to have a search firm or a search committee for a GM position than it is for a coaching position. The Titans did not use one for this coaching search, and that's because it's pretty easy to figure out the qualification of, oh, this guy has been a head coach before. Let's talk to them about what they've learned. But in a GM situation where usually at any given time only 2 or 3 active GMs are retreads, almost everybody's doing it for the first time, you do need a little bit of data telling you how these guys work and will be received.
Yeah, I think that's correct. That's correct. All right. Any other questions about this? I think we're good on the Brinker stuff. Here's how I would describe the entire trajectory of the front office, and it's why I've tried to convince Stillman that like I believe in Borgonzi, not because I think he's going to be great, but because I think he's the best football decision maker they've had in years since John Robinson pre-COVID. I would say 2018, 2019 was the last time they had like great decisions from the front office. And I think now they've got that. It doesn't mean it's going to work. It doesn't mean that Cam Ward and Carnell Tate are going to be Hall of Famers. It doesn't mean they're going to win a Super Bowl. It doesn't mean that Robert Saleh is the right guy. But what I believe in, and I think this is almost factually true at this point, is that slowly but surely, since firing Robinson, the decision-making got worse and worse and worse and is now getting better and better and better, slowly but surely. And I think that's, I don't know where that, and I don't know where the upside of that is. I don't know where it ends, but I do think that's what's happened. I don't know if that's a fair explanation of it. So
I think it's fair.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look. Any Sinkers Beverages, please go sign up for the In Crowd. In Crowd is their customer appreciation group. They don't send you much information, but every now and then they'll be like, hey, here you go. Here's a cool bottle of bourbon that we got. Here's a drink special over here. Hey, we got free wine tasting over here. Why don't you come try that out? They just do really. Here's an event we're doing in the parking lot at Bluegrass to show appreciation for all the stuff that you guys have done for us. They're just a really good communal company that cares about East Nashville and Bluegrass, of course, up in Hendersonville, their sister store. Almost 100 years of serving the community. Sinkers Beverages over 40 years. Their 40th birthday was last year. Bluegrass Beverages over 50 years. So a ton of experience in the community. Great selection, knowledgeable staff, award-winning 5-time Liquor Store of the Year, Sinkers Beverages, and of course, the craft beer retail fridge where you can get East Nashville Beer Works, Tennessee Brew Works, Yazoo Brewing Company, the best local craft beers you can get in that enormous, big, beautiful craft beer retail fridge that also won an award. So please go support Sinkers Beverages and all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network. Support good local business and Nick Suss. Pay for good journalism, Tennessean.com.
While we're here, before we move on, Titans just released 6 players to make some space for UDFAs. We'll play a quick little game with Braden here where I will name these players and you will tell me just yes or no if you knew they were on the roster. Okay. Some will be yeses, others will be maybe.
I knew they were on the roster?
You knew they were currently on the roster.
Okay.
Ali Gay has been waived.
I knew he was on the roster.
Nate Lynn has been waived.
Did not know he was on the roster.
Want to venture a guess as to position?
Nate Lynn?
Yeah.
No idea.
Linebacker. Okay. Isaiah Rakes has been waived.
I knew Isaiah Rakes was on the team.
Cam Riley has been waived.
Florida State Cam Riley? Is that right?
Linebacker Cam Riley has
I had no idea who was on the team. Nope, didn't know that.
Clay Webb has been waived.
I knew Clay Webb was on the team because I loved him coming out of Jacksonville State.
Blake Watson has been waived.
I was kidding. I really hated him coming out of Jacksonville State, considering the news. Did not know Blake Watson. Did not know, but he's a Tennessee guy, right? Memphis?
Think so. And finally,
I did not know him.
David Ibuka Agoha has been placed on the exempt international player list.
Oh, okay.
And will not count against the 90-man roster.
Did not know who that was. But I guess he's from another country. So there you go. Look at that. Lots of news. That's the news. Yeah, look, there we go. Half a point. I get half a point for Cam Riley being from Florida State. Okay. That's a perfect way to segue because they're going to have to do some roster churn on the bottom of the roster if they want Jackie Marshall to make the team. All right. First question for you is a week removed. You and I have not talked about your opinions on the record of picks outside of Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk. So they trade up to get Anthony Hill, who I still think has a really good chance of getting some looks as a wide 9, but we'll see about that. I might be the only one on wide 9 island right now with Anthony Hill, and I'm fine with that. They come back and they get 2 offensive linemen, Fernando Carmona out of Arkansas in the 5th round with pick 142. Nick Singleton, I like that pick as well. It's a little bit of a project, but I like that pick at 165. Jackie Marshall feels redundant, but they took a defensive tackle out of Baylor. Pat Coogan, who I know everyone loves just in general, out of Indiana, who was a left tackle at Indiana. He's going to be the center at 194. And then Jaron Kanek, who I really am intrigued by. 0 expectations for a 7th round tight end who's undersized, but I'm really intrigued by his skills. So I know we talked about Tate and Falk on the last episode on Friday of last week, but I want you to kind of work me through how you feel about the broad strategy of the Titans draft class and then picks Hill through the end. Any difference in opinion since they happened now that we're a week later?
Whatever letter grade or number grade you want to apply to this, my grade is whatever I can say that'll make you go, oh yeah, okay. That's pretty much whatever that spiritually feels like to you. That is the overall impression, overall grade I have of this class. And that's not to say anything negative or positive. That's just to say, yeah, that was a draft. They got players, and I think they're better because it is mathematically impossible to get worse via the draft. Not to repeat jokes not to repeat jokes that I've already used on the radio this week, but until the day that the commissioner comes out and is like, and with the 130th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select a Ryobi lawnmower battery. Like until something like that happens, teams are going to get better via the draft. And I think that the Titans have plugged some holes, have improved some depth, have strengthened the bottom of the roster and made some strides towards strengthening the top of the roster. I think the offense is more viable with Tate because of the 3-level offense stuff that we've talked about before. I think the defense is more viable because you've gone out and gotten 2 pieces that very much fit the Saleh mold of football player, and so it's going to be a quicker transition. I think that you're going to have questions on the offensive line because these are the Tennessee Titans, and what would they be if they didn't have questions on the offensive line? We're sitting here saying, oh man, the receiving core looks pretty good, so obviously the other thing has to be the other thing. Overall, I would say this is not the kind of draft class that I would personally describe as foundational, because I don't think it has enough players in it to be described as foundational.
Could you say the last two classes combined to form a potential foundation?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
When I look at a foundational draft class, I tend to be looking at something that has like 13 people in it. That like, oh, you got all of these assets, you accumulated, you gave up stuff so that you can build, and these are going to be the people. I don't know if an 8-man class can fundamentally be
I think
foundational, but
I think the way I look at it, and I know what you're saying, and I know we're talking about just this class, and that's sort of the I do think this is the best draft class in the AFC South. Not the least of which is because they have 2 higher picks than almost everyone else in the division. Like obviously Tate was the highest pick of anybody in the division. Falk was almost the highest pick of anybody in the division, and then they added up an upside player in Hill and some potential starting pieces in the back end, but very long shot here. I do think that if you look at what they've accomplished, and a lot of this hinges on Femi Oladejo being at least a starter. Doesn't have to be great, but he needs to be a starter. Kevin Winston needs to be a starter. Doesn't have to be great, but needs to be a starter. If you got a starting safety, a starting outside linebacker, a starting defensive lineman, a starting number 1 wide receiver, a starting quarterback, then you sprinkle in maybe a guard or a center, you sprinkle in a running back, you sprinkle in 2 other receivers that are going to be like, let's say your 2 and your 3, or your 3 and your 4 permanently. You got a starting tight end potentially. I'm putting these 2 classes together and saying there's not elite talent in these classes. Tate, Falk, and Ward have to be very good. But outside of those 3 players, I don't see rock stars. But I do see a quality of roster getting better as a and to me, that's how I would define foundation, right? Is like you're building up the depth of the roster to reach a certain point, so then you can put the superstars on top of it.
Yeah.
I guess is how I would look at it.
No, and you got to find the superstars. And the fear, if there's any fear, would be, oh, okay, did you just build yourself out of a top 10 pick next year without building yourself into the playoffs? So is the ability to get a superstar going to be more difficult because you have raised your floor without raising your ceiling? Which I don't want to speculate too much. We spent an entire episode talking about floor and ceiling last week. That would be the fear when it comes to this strategy of building. But beyond that, I don't know. I think this is a class that reflects what the Titans thought the draft class was. I think that this was a class that maybe reflects what the Titans are going to think the draft is for the foreseeable future, which is there aren't going to be 240, 270 players with draftable grades. There aren't going to be 50, 60 players with top 50 grades anymore. So if you have an opportunity to go get somebody who you actually think is worth the value, go get them. And if you have somebody who maybe isn't a positional need, but you would have drafted him a round or 2 ago, go pick him. And this might be more of a symbol of what the draft is becoming. And maybe we need to recalibrate, and maybe I need to recalibrate what my opinions are about draft value and about actually accumulating assets versus going and getting the 1 or 2 assets that you can. Because we all know this, fewer players are coming out of college than they used to. And the NIL stuff. And I don't necessarily want to make a huge deal of it, but yeah.
Well, so what I think is interesting about this, and Borgonzi talked a lot about this, and I think football people love talking about this stuff. And that is, I think and I think you just said a lot of this, so I'm not trying not to repeat myself here, but like the quality of the evaluations in the top 75 is going to get better. I think we're going to get more accurate. Every now and then the Jags are going to take a blocking tight end. That's just going to happen. But I think the evaluation of the quality of the top 75-ish players is going to get better, at least in the short term. Rules around NIL could change. And if the rules around NIL change and the dynamics change, the calculus changes for a prospect, they might come out and go back into being a 4th-round pick because that's the best financial decision. But right now, the best financial decision is to take more money to go back and play in college. And we know the dynamics. I think the quality of the evaluation should be much better over the next few years over the top 75 to 100 picks. And the quality of prospect between pick 150 and 250 is going to get way worse. So like what that does is that only increases the value gap between a 1st and 2nd round pick and a 6th and 7th round pick. That's all. And I that just is what it is. Like I don't think you're finding as many high level starting players just random diamond in the rough guy that you found in the 6th round. I don't know if that's going to happen as often anymore. So,
yeah, no, I think that's fair. And we can talk about this all day. We can talk about the hypotheticals and the logics of drafting, but the reality here is the Titans probably needed to find 4 starters in this year's draft to come out thinking like the draft was worth it. And right now, I feel comfortable saying they found 2. I feel pretty confident saying that 3 could be there by mid-season. And I think if you're getting to 4 or 5, you have really, really stretched on guys who maybe shouldn't be starting right away.
No, I think it's one of the offensive linemen in the top 3 picks. I think that's what you're talking about, right? And I think if Pat Coogan is the starting center, I don't think it happens right away. I think it happens midway or halfway through or back end of the season, which I think is okay. You're not taking a guy 194 to be your starter right away. That's sort of a bad plan to be in general. All right. So quickly here, let's run through some of these picks. Jacksonville takes a blocking tight end, the kid out of Texas A&M in the 2nd round, and then they have 3 third-round picks, which I actually think they did pretty well. They take Regis, the defensive tackle, Emmanuel Pregnon, who we all really love out of Oregon, and Husky, the safety, Jamal Husky out of Maryland, who I think is a really talented player. They added the Koizal kid out of Houston at tight end. They went back-to-back receivers, C.J. Williams and Josh Cameron at the end. I like Josh Cameron a little bit. And then Williams, the edge player there later in the draft. I don't know what Jacksonville was trying to accomplish with this. Their first overall pick was a guy that is largely viewed as the biggest reach. I don't want to get into PK's rant about reaches and consensus rankings, and teams value who they value. For whatever reason, blocking tight ends seem to be more valuable in the 2nd and 3rd rounds this year than ever before. That is what it is. Jack, do you have a discernible strategy around the Jacksonville Jaguars in this conversation?
Keep it up. Like, I don't mean keep it up, like keep doing what you're doing. Like, keep the franchise where it is. When you have a surprise season like the Jaguars did last year, sometimes building the infrastructure means sticking as many fingers in as many holes as in the dam as possible to prevent leakage. And this does feel like a draft class that prevents leakage. Is that a good strategy when you're a prime regression to the mean candidate? I do not know. But if the Jaguars don't think they're going to regress to the mean, then this is a good keep it up strategy.
Their first 4 picks were all non-premium positions. Generally value picks outside of the tight end from A&M, but you went and got a depth piece on defensive line. I think you got a potential starter in Pregnon and Husky at safety and guard, and you drafted a tight end. But a tight end, a defensive tackle, a guard, and a safety, all 4 non-premium positions. So I agree with your point. Like this, they believe in their core, their playmakers, and their talent. Now they're building pieces that kind of supplement on that, and we'll see if it's the right strategy. Without a first and 3/3, though, you could do some damage with 3/3, and I don't know if they did damage as much as they did kind of just played it safe. I think that's right, Joe. Jags playing it safe. I think that's correct. All right, Houston they trade up to get Keelan Rutledge, which some people believe the Titans were going up to get. Caden McDonald is a total value pick at number 2. I think that's a really good value pick. A 2-down player, but a great defensive lineman who's going to stop the run. They also get a blocking tight end, I think, with many people considered a reach with their 2nd-round pick and the Klein kid. Then they go guard, linebacker, safety. I like Kamari Ramsey, the safety. I love the Aiden Fisher pick at linebacker at the back end. I think that's a value pick as well. But they went trench warfare here. The Texans went trench warfare, not a surprise at all, because their offensive line has been their one major issue. If you watched any playoff games or any important games, C.J. Stroud is completely shook because he's under pressure like crazy. So I think getting Rutledge and getting McDonald to shore up your offensive and defensive lines was solid. It's not flashy, but that's a team that doesn't need flashy picks right now.
I like the Texans draft, especially relative to what the Texans are. It's easier to grade the Titans on the curve of they needed to get a lot better in the draft. The Texans didn't need to get a lot better in the draft, and I still think they got better in the draft. Rutledge was one of my favorite players in the whole class. If the Titans ended up with Rutledge as their 2nd first-rounder instead of Keldrick Falk, I probably would have been a lot more complimentary, just my personal preference on Rutledge, the football player. But yeah, Caden McDonald's a good player. I agree on Aiden Fisher. I agree on Ramsey. They got some good players. I think this is a utile draft for the Texans.
The Colts waited. They also did not, of course, have a first-round pick as they traded for Sauce Gardner. Or is that next year's first-round pick? I can't remember.
This year. Yeah.
This year. Okay, so C.J. Allen, total value pick and a potential one of the best off-ball linebackers potentially in the class. A.J. Halsey, also considered one of the best safeties in the class, a very deep class. So they get strength up the middle on defense with their first 2 picks. Also, again, remember, no first-round picks for either Jacksonville or the Colts. They get the kid Farmer out of that's out of Duke, correct? The guard, or is that Kentucky? I can't remember which one where he's out of. Bryce Betcher, another linebacker. So they added 2 edge players as well as a running back. I like the Seth McGowan pick late in the draft. That's a complimentary piece there. But they go 2 edge players, 2 linebackers, and a safety. So you clearly know what they're trying to accomplish with the Colts. What do you think about the Colts draft class?
Very Colts draft. It feels like something the Colts would do. I'll ask you 2 rhetorical questions, and we can leave it at this. How many off-ball linebackers did they draft?
2.
And how do you think I feel about that?
You hate it.
So I'm not going to grade the draft particularly high.
Yeah, I hear you. I do think the Houston Texans also drafted 2 off-ball linebackers, just for what it's worth.
Eventually, at a certain point, yeah, they did.
Yeah, they went much later. Allen was the first pick.
Much later,
Colts, so. Yeah, no, I hear you. If you had to rank these 3 in terms of, like, there's 2 different ways to look at it. There's just pure talent acquired, and then there's sort of like strategic approach. If you had to look at these 3 and kind of break them all down relative to where these teams are, like, again, I can say these are a bunch of B- draft picks for the Colts, and they are a B- franchise that consistently achieves B- results and has no A+ players or F players. But, like, is that good enough to do anything in the AFC South? Maybe it is. They were the best offense in the NFL last year until Daniel Jones got hurt. So if you had to put the 3 of them relative to each other, how are you ranking them?
I would probably gut instinct go Texans, Titans, Colts, Jags, ranking the AFC South draft classes. But it's not my job to grade these things. I have not watched tape on Bryce Betcher. I know who he is. I watched a lot of Oregon football. But I'm not going to pretend like I'm the kind of draft Nick that's grinding the specific granular details of these players.
I think everybody got one good player that I like later in the draft. I like Nick Singleton for the Titans. I like the Koizal kid, the tight end from Houston for Jacksonville. I like Aiden Fisher, Kamari Ramsey for Houston, and I like McGowan for the Colts. I think the top of the draft is what makes the Titans draft the best draft of these 3, and that's merely because of location in the draft. Carnell Tate is the best player in any of these 4 draft classes, and I don't think it's even close. And you could argue Keldrick Falk is number 2. I know not based on positional need, but Keldrick Falk is a much higher graded prospect, in my opinion, than Keelan Rutledge. And so by definition, 2 of these teams not having a first-round pick, the best 2 players in this division's draft are probably on the Titans. So I would go Titans 1, Texans 2. I don't think it's close. I don't think the Colts or Jags have a case to be in the conversation. I think it's Titans 1, Texans 2, and a lot of it will come down to, is Caden McDonald an elite defensive lineman? Is Anthony Hill actually starting on the Titans defense? And then there's the depth pieces. What do you get from some of these pieces you drafted much, much, much later? But I think it's Titans clearly number 1, Texans number 2, which to me, and I would probably go Colts 1, Jags. I would go Colts and then Jags. But, like, Jacksonville's already, to your point, such a good team coming into the season, at least in their own mind. I think the Texans are the best. And so giving the Texans one of the better 2 draft classes, I think, puts them probably in the lead for the division power rankings mentally. I'd have to go back and really study the free agents that they've done, all these teams. But the bottom line is I think the Titans had the best draft class, and I think the Titans absolutely closed the gap on all 3 teams in the division. And I think that is what you want to hear if you're a fan coming out of the draft process.
I won't be the wet blanket. Let's leave it at that.
Wow. For the first time ever. I appreciate that. How close are these 4 teams after free agency and the draft and not seeing any of these players on the field yet? I'm just saying, does it feel like this is a division? Like, it doesn't feel like Jacksonville's going to replicate how good they were, but they're still going to be good. Does it feel like we're back into that? Like, every one of these teams is between 7 and 12 wins.
I would say just got to see them play, got to see it all work out. I would say Houston is head and shoulders above everybody else. And I would say, just based off of what I expect, regression to the mean type stuff, Jacksonville's probably an 8 or 9 win team. Indy's probably what they usually are. And the Titans might have made a push to be a 6-win team, a push to be a 7-win team. I still think they're last place in the pecking order. But if Daniel Jones doesn't get healthy, the Colts are a mess.
Yeah, I agree. I think 7 to 9 wins is possible for the Titans and Colts. More likely with an injury or whatever, you're down in the 6 to 8 win range. I think I like the Texans number 1. I'd put the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 2. That's what I would do. There's some chaos around Jacksonville with injuries, and like Travis Hunter could be a great player for them. Trevor Lawrence is great when he's healthy. It's interesting to find out. So, yeah. Has anyone watched Cam sail away? Has anyone watched some of Arvell's interviews? Tate sounds like so much more of a fit for our locker room than Reese. Wonder if that was a factor. I think Carnell Tate's personality and how he's wired is absolutely a factor in drafting Carnell Tate. I don't think Arvell Reese's personality was a reason why they had him graded lower potentially than Carnell Tate. I think it's like Reuben Bain. I don't think it's the off the field stuff. I think it's the on the field stuff. And I think the on the field stuff with Arvell Reese is you don't know what he's going to be. And this team they need knowledge right now. And I don't know. I'm coming around on I think they passed on Reese because they don't know exactly what they were getting, and that was too much of a risk for them. That's how I would view it.
To use the word Dave Ziegler used on Tuesday, there was alignment and agreement on who Carnell Tate was. What we know about Arvell Reese, I don't know if it's possible for any front office.
Infer what you would like to infer about Arvell Reese.
I don't believe it's possible for any front office. This is not talking about the Titans. This is talking very, very broadly. It's impossible for anybody to know what Arvell Reese is.
I completely agree. Completely agree. I do think they would have taken David Bailey though, if David Bailey had fallen.
I for sure. I don't think they thought that was a possibility.
Yeah, I know. I was wish casting at the end of on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week for sure. Question from Big 23. It's a good one here. Did we force Saleh into a speed wide 9 talk too much all offseason? Every time we asked him about it, it just steered towards our versatile power players. Then we took Tate over Reese. So here, we talked about this a little bit on Saturday at our post-draft party. Talked a little bit about with PK, and I think you and I kind of talked about it a little bit on Friday of last week. The draft is a moving target, and I think the Titans were trading up to get an offensive lineman. 2 great offensive linemen went off the board right before they made the trade up. It doesn't mean that Falk wasn't also very high on their board. He clearly was. And so that they had trades probably agreed to in principle or close to it in place with other teams to trade up and get either Keelan Rutledge or Caleb Fano. And so, or is it Lomu? I get those two damn.
Caleb Lomu.
Spencer Fano went early. Caleb Lomu went late. Got it. Sorry. That's my bad. Me. And I think what you have to understand is that they didn't plan all along to trade up to get Keldrick Falk. That wasn't they didn't go into this going 35. We're going to use this. We're going to trade up a few slots because we love Keldrick Falk. You don't know who's going to fall, which is also why you don't do the Arvell Reese at 4, come back and get Omar Cooper at 31 argument, because you don't know who's going to fall. You don't know who's going to be available. So you have to take the guy based on your best projections. So they take Tate, the guy they all had alignment and agreement on, filled a position of need, fits the locker room culture, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens is you're looking at 35, you're going, do we want Zion Young at 35 or Colton Hood at 35 or fill in the blank, Emmanuel Pregnon at 35? Or do we think Keldrick Falk is too good to pass up? He doesn't play the position that we all think he should play. We all think they need the speed rusher wide 9 guy. Keldrick Falk doesn't play that position. That's not what he is. But he's too good to pass up. And so you make the decision in the moment to go get him. It's way more fluid, I think, than people realize. Their plan might have been Pat Coogan all along, but with which pick and where, who knows?
Yeah. Also, I know Braden is beating the drum about Anthony Hill playing wide 9. I will say, frankly, I think he is the 3rd likeliest wide 9 in the Titans inside linebacker room right now.
Oh, wow.
The
Wow.
Titans
Okay.
have a type when it comes to inside linebacker. James Williams was inherited. Obviously, he was not brought in specifically for this, but he has those traits, and the Titans tried him a little bit at it in practice last year. I think he's somebody who might get an opportunity to try that a little bit. And Mohamed Diabout, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name yet right. I have not spoken about him very much yet, but the linebacker they acquired from Cleveland is like 6'4", 230, like your classic. If you keep using R. Mason Thomas as the example, he has that classic R. Mason Thomas build. He's another one who you have guys who, frankly, are not going to be asked to start, who you can experiment with giving a new role. Versus Anthony Hill, who you traded up to draft. Obviously, you think he has potential to do the thing you want him to do. So I think there are other players on this roster who, if you are trying to find a new position for them, would be more natural fits than maybe just, guy who's never done it before, who you just traded up to get. Let's make him do something he's never done.
You're saying he's never done it before, but he played behind the line of scrimmage, blitzing all college career. So
yes, but
from where is
blitzing from
certainly matters.
By that logic, then Arvell Reese has played edge rusher. He hasn't.
I mean, he played a few. I mean, he actually did play a few snaps technically there, but I agree with
65 snaps.
No, I agree with your point. But taking a player at 60 who has 17 and a half sacks and saying, "Hey, we're going to make you pressure the quarterback," is not the same thing as at number 4 taking a player who's never done the thing you're going to play him at. R. Mason Thomas, by the way, 6'2", 240. That's identical to Anthony Hill. They are both 6'2", 240.
I get it.
So again, I'm not. I realize that I am in the minority. And my analysis of Anthony Hill is to Big 23's point, there is a deficiency at the true wide 9 position right now on the roster. If that's what they want, if they want to go big, they've got lots of good options. If they want to rotate based on situational football, they've got lots of good options. I think they're going to put Anthony Hill at off-ball middle linebacker, and they're going to bring him along slowly behind Cody Barton. And then their goal, I think, in drafting him is to put him next to Cedric Gray. I don't think it's going to work. That's my opinion. My opinion is he doesn't cover well. Cedric Gray doesn't cover well. You can't have those two guys on the field. But you know what he does really well? 32 tackles for loss, 17 and a half sacks. He gets after the quarterback very well. He triggers downhill, run blitzing and pass blitzing very, very well. So I realize that I'm going from point A to point D here. I get all of that, and I know I'm one of the only people saying it. So
last note on this. You know who was sneaky productive last year and might have more twitch than we give him credit for? Truman Jones. Let's see if he makes the team. I did not expect
that name to come out of your mouth.
I like Truman Jones.
In the vein of, you know who I think is not getting enough credit in this, and I could be totally wrong on this. I know it was late in the year and it was only in spots. But could Jalen Harrell be the number 2 coming off the bench at wide 9? Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there are guys on this team who I don't think are 13 sack a year guys. But if you just need somebody to get 6 sacks, I wouldn't be shocked if Jalen Harrell could do it. I wouldn't be shocked if Truman Jones can do it. Let's see how the competition plays out.
Here's a theory I've been working on and noodling on. I want to see what you think about this. Z Dean says, so did the Titans get swiped at 4 and 31 with Jeremiah Love the pick before and Rutledge a couple picks before? I think they were happy to go with Tate over Love. I think they were totally fine with, well, thank goodness Arizona took Jeremiah Love. I don't know if they wanted to make the decision between Love and Tate. I think they were totally happy that someone made the decision for them, if that makes sense. I do think they wanted to come up and get a starting offensive lineman in the last few picks of the first round.
Yeah. Sure.
Do you agree with my theory that like they were fine with, oh yeah, Jeremiah Love's off the board. Okay. Guess we don't have to answer questions about taking a running back at number 4.
It made it easier. It did.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying.
It did. It definitely made it easier. I don't know. The Cardinals, I don't think the Cardinals necessarily wanted to make a pick, but the fact that they made the pick they did made it easier for the Titans to make the pick they did.
I've come around. That's kind of my theory that's landed on me the last few days. It's like I don't think they wanted Jeremiah Love as much as they didn't want to make a decision. Like they were comfortable with both. You make the call, Arizona.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened. All right. Anything else? What you got coming up on the Tennessean, Tennessean.com? What you got?
Coverage of rookie camp this weekend. If you want some
I can't wait.
Official updates, I have a story that should be running tomorrow that I'm not going to sit here and say is the best thing I've ever written, but it will be running tomorrow. And if you want to learn a little bit more about Pat Coogan, you'll be able to learn. Like, again, I'm not going to oversell. I'm not going to undersell. I'm not super proud of
the greatest article ever written about pick 194 in the internet's history.
You'll be able to read roughly 600 words about the guy in anticipation of rookie camp, which should be fine. I talked to Mike Denbrock for it. He's a nice man.
Yeah. Man, what's he been up to these days?
He's Notre Dame's offensive coordinator. He's the offensive coordinator of maybe the preseason number one team in college football.
Preseason number one.
I said maybe. It's probably 3, but like maybe.
Sinkers Beverages, Tennessean.com. Rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up, notifications turned on YouTube, please. Does college football have a gambling problem? Or does America have a gambling problem?
Both yes and both yes, definitively.
What dinosaur would Pat Coogan be? He is a triceratops.
I don't know, man.
He's got short arms and he pushes the pile.
We can talk about what we want to talk about, man.
Go with college football's gambling problem.
I don't know. I don't want to be.
I don't know how they solve it.
No, I don't want to be the guy who's clutching pearls. But like, if this scandal happened 2.5 years ago, then there would be no question about him having his eligibility stripped and being banned from playing sports. Like, our tides have shifted so quickly of what we allow and what we accept. I was thinking about it this morning because it will surprise none of you to learn that I don't have like a professional podcasting rig. I balance my microphone on books and a yoga mat and stuff. And one of the books that I was balancing it on is this 20-year-old book called Fantasyland that I can't recommend more strongly. It's one of the best sports books ever written. And it's about a reporter who had never played fantasy sports before and joined the highest profile, biggest payout fantasy baseball league in the country for 1 year to see what it was like. And that book, when it was written in like 04, 05, described people who played fantasy football or fantasy baseball as sports' lunatic fringe of like, oh, I'm amassing myself with the people who are so loony about sports that they play fake sports. Look at these weirdos. And now we think about the proliferation of how much we care about first touchdown scorer and how much we care about over under on rushing totals and how much we care about like same game parlays and stuff like this. Sports and America has a press button get money problem, and I know it, and I'm not trying to clutch pearls. I'm not trying to be the guy who can name all of the 8 men out off the top of his head because he's fascinated by sports betting history. Like, I'm trying to leave that part of it out and just talk about.
I love Shoeless Joe.
That's one of the 8.
It's a great movie, by the way. Great movie.
8 Men Out or Field of Dreams?
I would go 8 Men Out over Field of Dreams. Is a bigger deal when I was a kid. Loved it a lot more, but 8 Men Out I think is holds up far better over. They're both great movies. All you under 30 listening to this, go watch 8 Men Out. It's a great movie.
Good book.
Great cast, by the way, too.
The book 8 Men Out is another book that I have balancing up my tripod right now as I'm realizing.
There we go.
Yeah, I am fearful about the trust in institutions that we will be able to leverage as this becomes more common. And like, I'm fearful about the insider trading of it all. I'm fearful about media members. Yeah. Like, I know a lot of media members who are very good at gambling on the things they cover. And like, these are my friends. If they can go make money, go make money. I like when my friends are happy. But like, we are in a really strange time where we are slowly eroding the trust we have in the institutions to be fair. And I don't know if we care whether or not these are fair, because I think that something that modern sociology and modern society has forced us to do is to choose between engaging with something that we know is harmful so that we individually can have a chance at thriving versus choosing to not individually thrive so we can rid something that we know is harmful.
Mm.
And I think it has been much more common in the terms of sports gambling. Oh, well, I'll go get mine. I know this is hurtful, but if I can win off of it, or if it can help me in some way,
yeah,
I will participate in the thing that I know is societally harmful. It's really, really tricky. And this Sorsby situation is, Braden and I texted about this beforehand. It is a tipping point. We just don't know what direction it's about to tip in.
yeah, or how far it's going to go, or
Yeah.
to what end. I think college football presents a very difficult dynamic, just structurally and how it's run. I think the NFL, and I've actually been asked about this on radio interviews, and I use the Nicholas Petit-Frere example. Like, the NFL has to have integrity in its outcomes, but it can govern it really tightly.
Yeah.
College football cannot. Like, you can track NPF's phone, and you can know that he did this. He placed this wager in the parking lot at Titans facility, not on the road. And if he had done it out on the road, it wouldn't have counted, and he wouldn't have gotten in trouble. But because he parked his car and walked into the facility and did the whole thing, like, that's how it violated NFL rules. The NFL can do all of that. The NFL can track every place you are. They know where you are. They know what you're doing. They can do all of this stuff because it's a tightly run ship where the outcomes are worth billions, and they have to stay full of integrity. Now, a bigger conversation about, like, I'm okay as sort of like victimless crime should be legal but regulated. Like, I am big on, like, as long as we as the American people have the information to make the best decisions about ourselves, I'm okay with gambling and narcotics and prostitution, like, you name it. I'm okay with it as long as it is regulated with integrity and regulated with proper information so that the public is educated on this. To the point about Eddie said, casinos in our pockets, what's a mistake? I've done a 180 on it. You know what needs to happen to the gambling apps? They need to look like cigarette packages look like after they got regulated. Like, Joe Camel was taken away from kids. Joe Camel was cool. He was a camel smoking a cig, and he was marketing to children. It was colorful. It was vibrant. It was upbeat. And they said, you can't do that anymore. You got to slap you got to put a warning label on the package and no more advertising to kids. These look like slot machines for a reason. Yeah. It's dopa for your brain. It needs to be black and white and very plain so that it doesn't incentivize you to come back all the time. That's regulation.
I will say, I think one thing that's been a little bit under-discussed about this Sorsby situation specifically, Brennan Sorsby turned 22 years old in January. And while I do believe it is possible for somebody to develop a gambling addiction from the time he turned 21 in January of 2025 to now, a span of about 16 months, there is reporting that says that some of the bets that Sorsby placed were while he was at Indiana, which was 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago at this point. And if that's the case, he was under the age of 21 participating in gambling. And again, I'm not trying to clutch pearls. I'm not trying to say, oh, my stars, America's youths. But I think it does need to be mentioned that, like, the safeguards we have in place aren't working if people can be participating in this stuff when they're 18, 19 years old, and even younger than that in some cases. There's something about it that just makes me think we are heading toward a cliff that states can have their own individual rules. I know some states might make it legal at 18 to bet. Some states might not have guardrails in house, but I think it's being under discussed that Nicholas Petit-Frere or Calvin Ridley or any of these NFL players who have been caught gambling in whatever capacity they've been caught have been adults. And college students are kind of in that murky in between of the difference between 18 and 21 in this country does mean a lot. And I don't know. I don't want to say they're not adults. I don't want to say that they are not able to make their own decisions. But again, I think it's being under-discussed just how young college students are to be making thousands of bets per year.
Yep. All right. Unfortunately, he's going to be the poster child for a problem that exists on every college campus in America. And I don't know how it's unfair, but, like, it is what it is. And you got to make a statement and make to your point, there's a tipping point here, but I don't know which direction it's going or how far it's going or what it's going to look like. Cause college football, there's no way it's total chaos like, across the board. conferences in schools and the government's not going to help and save these people. The government has a million other things they care about. They do not care about solving college football's problems, unfortunately. So nor necessarily should they. Okay. I think that's it for us. Sinkers Beverages. Great show, Nick. Always a pleasure talking to you. Have a great weekend. Hot Read coming up later on this week. We got Lamestream Sports as well. We got all kinds of good stuff for you. So stay tuned for all of the great content across the 440 Sports Network. Go to Sinkers Beverages and go read good journalism, Tennessean.com. For Nick, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks to all of you in the comments. We'll talk to you next week.